Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today we're going to be doing our crowdfunding show where we talk about some new upcoming crowdfunding campaigns from Gamefound or Kickstarter, as well as some new games from crowdfunding services that have arrived in the library and what we think about them. So today, as you can see, we're going to be talking about two new projects, One Deck Galaxy, as well as Agemonia. And we're also going to be talking about For Sale, particularly the Advisors expansion, as well as Rurik, Dawn of Kiev. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. And we're going to start off with Agemonia. Now, when I originally saw Agemonia, I thought to myself, interesting. What is this? And it seemed to be just another run-of-the-mill dungeon crawler. And ultimately, that's kind of what you're getting here. So Agemonia is a dungeon crawl that does a lot of things to make it more accessible and going to hit the table more. And that's huge for something like this in this genre. So let's go ahead and take a look at what it is. So first off, we have a gigantic city. So it's its own fantasy land with heroes and a pretty high price point. But that's honestly, that's kind of the price for games like this. So 1 to 4 players, so it does have cooperative and solo play, lots of different components, and it has some cool things that are integrated that, like I said, will help get you into here. Now the gameplay, there are many different channels that we can look on for gameplay, but I'm going to show you briefly just an overview by the Dice Tower. So Dice Tower's video here is extremely good. If you have a chance, go check it out. If you really are interested in the gameplay, but I'll go ahead and give you a brief overview here of what that gameplay looks like. So this is just a quick gameplay glance from what's happening here. So when you start each round, you're going to have a big map that's laid out on the board from this campaign book. So you'll flip open the page and there will be whatever you're working on. So whatever the scenario or the map is, which is really nice because it's full art, which is beautiful. I really like the art in here. A lot of vibrant colors, but they also have it so that you have no terrain or anything that you're laying out. Now, instead of terrain that you're laying out, as you can see, there's no text on this book. So the big thing is when you interact with specific places on the board here, you are going to reach story points, and that's going to have you reaching into a separate deck of cards, and that's where your kind of, I guess, your gameplay setup is going to come in. So think of it more like something like Solomon Kane or Mansions of Madness, where you're going to be in the middle of your game pulling out stuff as opposed to pulling it out at the start. But the big thing you are going to be pulling out are your player characters. So each character has its own player board. You have some pieces that represent the level ups that you're going to be using. And then you also have these discs here that represent your stamina. Now, stamina, I think, is a really cool system here. It's not only your health, but it's also kind of your exerting points, and you lose, you're kind of out once you run out of stamina. It's bad things can happen to you. So I have not really gotten that far into that, but the big thing is you want to manage your stamina and your health. That way you're not defeated in the scenario. So I like this system. I like kind of the overexerting yourself to get successes, but the game itself is very bare bones. You roll dice to get successes. It does separate those dice into action dice and reaction dice, which I think is cool. So you roll separate sets of dice to see what you do when you take damage as opposed to when you deal it. So I do like that. There are also roles that you can take as these heroes. There are some that are going to be better at certain things. There are 3 main aspects, like your might, your agility, and then your wisdom. And then each character is going to be better at certain things. You also have your movement points. And like I said, this is very straightforward. You have a move action, you have a basic action, you do your thing. The big thing that separates it, though, is that map and just kind of opening it up. So think something like Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, except the entire campaign is built around this. And I think that's really cool. I think that's really neat. So with that being said, let's go ahead and go back to the Kickstarter page to see what we're going to be getting here. Once again, if you are watching and you have any comments about what you're seeing here, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and we'll talk about them for sure during the stream, or we can talk about them after if you're watching it after the stream. So the heroes, we talked about how you have your own boards. They are going to be dual layered, which is super nice. You have these stamina tokens, action tokens. You're going to have a storybook that introduces to your character. Think something like Tainted Grail, where you can get a good background. The other cool thing, each hero is very different, has their own backstory from different factions in the world. I think that's exciting. The world's gigantic. The book is huge. There's at least 25 different maps, but multiple scenarios per map. If you get the base edition, you're going to get a bunch of these standees. But if you get the other edition, you get obviously these miniatures. You could even sun drop them if you want to pay the extra money. And then there's also a storybook as well as a city book, which do come with narration. So if you want to use an app to read them to you, that's pretty sweet. So you can do that if you want to. Add-ons include metal coins, extra dice, sleeves, and I do always recommend you get the extra dice. Nothing feels worse than when you're going for a bunch of successes and you have to keep on setting things aside and trying to catch them. I just love rolling giant things of dice. It feels very satisfying when you've upgraded a stat so high that you're able to roll a bunch. So I really like that. It's usually one of the cheaper upgrades, but worth it. And then if you get the Kickstarter edition, you get what's called the reliquary here. This is important because you can get this later. It says that it is for Kickstarter backers, but it will probably be included later in some type of promo content or maybe additional expansion, so that can happen. So these include things like these large scenarios. You can get more summons. You can get these chip upgrades, which I think is probably the nicest since you're going to be using those stamina tokens to track your health. So I really like that. But just lots of new stuff that's going to come in here. So I think that's fine. They're still on their way to unlocking stuff. So with a price this high, the game itself has only raised about $202,000, which is not a small feat. This is a lot of money, but that's kind of where Agemonia sits. Now, me in particular, am I going to be backing this one? Honestly, probably not. This one is one that says that everything will most likely be available at retail. So this is very similar to the situation with Lucky Duck games, where you can get their stuff later. It's just like through the Lucky Duck exclusive, so you just have to order it through their web store. So I figure on this one, I'm going to wait for the reviews to see if this is one that we need to add, because there are a lot in this genre. So not one that I'm necessarily going to buy right now, but I'm going to wait for it to hit retail, and if it's something that's worth pursuing, I'll go ahead and do that. The biggest exclusive thing that for sure not going to include later is the Sun Drop. And that is, if I do like sun drops, all our stuff from Awakened Realms is sun dropped. And I do like that whole style. I love the way it looks. But for me, this is one that I'm going to pass on for right now and wait till I hear some more solid gameplay critiques. So very straightforward system here. I do like the stamina system, and I love the map. I love how that works. I am so excited for more games to integrate that. Looking forward to when Gloomhaven transforms their scenario book into that flip book. But I would like to see more of this and hear more reviews outside of the previews that are available now. So that is our first game. That's Agemonia. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next game, which is one that I am somewhat familiar with from a company that I'm familiar with based on a system I'm familiar with. And that's going to be One Deck Galaxy. Now, One Deck Galaxy here is the sequel game to One Deck Dungeon. Now, before we jump too far into One Deck Galaxy, I'm actually going to talk about One Deck Dungeon. So this is the core system that it's based off of. So let's go ahead and pull that up here. So One Deck Dungeon has you playing either solo or cooperatively with multiple people, and you're going to be jumping from dungeon to dungeon, killing monsters. So for me, this game is not one that I really like that much. It's okay. Every time I start this game, I feel that I am just set up for a luck fest. This is one where I don't really get to control that much until I get severely far into the game. And even then, if you roll a really poor roll in the game early on, like if you roll ones and twos, you might just lose, and there might not be anything you can do about it. And it's really frustrating to be really at the mercy of the dice. Lots of games deal with this by having mitigation, things that you could do with low value dice, or giving you copious amounts of dice where it doesn't really matter that much. So I really like how certain games tackle this. But in One Deck Dungeon, your dice, I mean, you are at that mercy there. That's what you get. If you roll poorly, that's it. Now, things that I really like about One Deck Dungeon are the characters themselves. I love that each character has their own special ability here. I love when you attack and take out a monster, you can upgrade yourself by stacking under, or you can increase the amount of dice you're rolling by stacking to the right. Really like that. I love this system. I also love how the dungeons get more deadly by stacking cards underneath it, and you're kind of traversing through this dungeon, revealing monster after monster. I think it's a very solid system. I also really enjoy how the different monsters work. I like how you're kind of combining dice to put them onto things, and you can use your dice of the same value to make wilds. I really like this system. I think it's really well done. But once again, those dice, it just kills me. This is not one that I really gravitate towards coming back to. Now, that being said, that's One Deck Dungeon. So let's talk about One Deck Galaxy and what does it do to solve this problem or tackle this problem. Now, right off the bat, you're going to notice that it's pretty much the same when it comes to the characters, which I think is a good thing. That means that they've taken the things that work and they've kept it. So each character is going to be very similar, where you're going to have your, let me find a picture. There you go. You have your character here with a special ability on the bottom, but you also have your stats. So same thing. These are the number of dice that you're going to be rolling. which makes a lot of sense. So you use these dice to take on challenges. But the next thing here, you'll have the galaxy deck itself. So once again, these are the monsters, essentially. They're planets that you're exploring or colonizing, and you'll see that it's a little bit different. So I do think that this one is unfortunate because I did like the idea of tackling monsters and defeating them, and each monster kind of had its own flavor, but the artwork here is just a picture of a planet or kind of a generic sci-fi setting, which is fine. Nothing, but I did like the kind of flavor that the different monsters had earlier. Works out very similarly, though. You have the thing that you're trying to complete, and then you have the upgrade side on the left and the bottom, and you can choose when you complete them. So you can also use this thing up here to get some level up, but the big things are those special abilities and the extra dice. Now, here is the twist here. In addition to having the monsters that you're going to be fighting, this is where you can lose your low value dice. So they've taken the criticism. They say, hey, you have all these extra dice that you're going to roll because, naturally it's just going to happen. And here's what you can do with this. And you can develop science, and you can develop spaceships for fleet. Now, I won't get too far into what these do, but this is really sweet because it understood that, hey, you're going to have a lot of times where you're going to just roll stuff that doesn't work, and they're giving you some sort of way to use them. And this actually reminds me of the game like Too Many Bones, where, yes, you can miss in that game a lot, but missing is not the end of the world. It's actually good sometimes, and that's where it goes to here. I love that they introduced this mechanic. This is one that's going to get me excited to play this because I'm not going to lose in the first scenario. I'm going to get, bonuses and power-ups in some other way. And I love that. I think that's super cool. So that's fantastic. The other big change here is the adversary here. So the adversary is so fascinating. So instead of going through dungeon after dungeon, and then at the very end of the game, you're fighting a boss, you fight the boss right off the bat. And the boss here just has its health right off the, it's available. It's there to tackle. And the way you tackle it is using your Federation points. And these Federation points are kind of like many objectives that you're going to be taking during the game. So it's your job to meet these objectives and then take down the giant creature or giant spaceship or alien that you're after. So this is a huge twist on the game. So it keeps the core system, which I like. The character, the upgrading, and then the giant boss at the end there and the escalating power. I love that. I think that's amazing. I think that's great. But they added two distinct things that I think are really going to help the game. The first one is using those missed dice to do actual actions. Super cool. I really like that. That's going to get me engaged and make me think of using all the dice instead of looking at, half of them and saying, okay, these are useless, which I think is awesome. And then the other cool thing is this mini objective system. It's going to give me ideas and things and checkpoints that I get to check off instead of just, thinking, all right, I got to do the best I can each round. And I actually have objectives that I'm working for. And that's going to give me that little dopamine rush as I play of, oh yeah, I got it. And I really like that. I think that's awesome. I'm excited. I think that this is a solid choice. I think this is a great evolution of the system, and it's one that I'm really excited for. Now, am I backing it or not? Let's go ahead and look to see what the levels are. So first off, $25 for the game, awesome, and then you can get 2 games. The other one here is you can get the deluxe game. Now, here is the big deal. You're going to get foil tokens. You're going to get plastic cards. And I actually really like that. So I really like plastic cards. This means that A, you don't have to sleeve them. 2, they're not going to get damaged by anything. I love that. I think that's so cool. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of these stretch goals. So we have circular bits. We have cubes. I have a feeling that we're going to include these anyway. You're going to get dice, right? Those cards. All right. We've got normal cards, codex, a container, a box. Now, I don't understand. I feel like a lot of these things are just, they're going to be here. I don't get it. Or is this just something funny? These are inverse stretch goals. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so it's a joke, and it totally went over my head. So $50,000 is their funding goal. So this is just what your money's going towards. That's pretty hilarious, actually. I really appreciate this. That's fantastic. So here are the actual stretch goals. That's really funny. So more homeworlds, a campaign mode, which is fantastic. And then this is raised itself. Let's look. It's raised 118,000. So right off the bat, you're getting a bunch of new content. You're getting a brand new campaign mode. But is this all going to be Kickstarter exclusive? Let's find out. All right. So we have the shipping. It looks like nothing is too crazy Kickstarter exclusive here. The big thing is the foil tokens and the plastic cards. And once again, it doesn't really say here if they're going to be exclusive. Let's go check the facts to find out. Game finish. Will future content be available? Yep, there it is. Future expansion should have a crowdfunding campaign similar to this with plastic cards as available option. Okay. So here's the kicker here. If you would like the plastic cards, it looks like you can only get them in the Kickstarter here, but in future Kickstarters, when you're getting expansion, that's when you can go ahead and grab the deluxe edition of this game. So this one might be worth getting the deluxe edition now if you know that you like the system, but you're looking for some changes or improvements. So that would be my recommendation. But if you are willing to wait and give it a try, you can play it secondhand. Now this one, I think I'll actually back. I think this is one that I've been on the fence about. It's a very cheap price point, but there's a lot of game here. If you've played the original One Deck Dungeon, there's a lot of game in there. You can play it for a long time. Once again, it's got that solo and cooperative mode. If you buy multiple copies, you can play with up to 4 people, which I think is really cool. And the system itself is fun. I really like the character level up, and I really like the progression and the abilities. I think that's so fun. I love that you're constantly getting bonuses. Once again, my biggest criticism with the original was the low dice. You're just done with them. I think this solves that problem, and I'm willing to give it a try because I think that this is such a good system, and I want to see it improve. So I think this is one that I will be getting here for the library because I think it's got a good spot. It's small, it's quick, and it can play up to 4. I think that's awesome. So probably going to get 2 copies of this. Super excited. This one is really exciting. So that's One Deck Galaxy. Now, that is all of the games that we've talked about that are on Kickstarter now. Obviously, there are a whole bunch of games that are out there, and we'll talk about them in future weeks. But I want to talk specifically about some new games that came into our library that we're super excited to talk about and play, and just really cool new games. Now, the first game that I want to talk about is Rurik, Dawn of Kiev. Very interesting game. I'm playing a 4-player game of it later today, as well as a 3-player game of it. So I'm excited to try it. I've only played the solo mode of this so far just to learn the game. So I'm excited to see how it plays with more people, but I'll give you my initial impressions of it as a solo mode. Now, this game itself is so fascinating. Now, before we even jump into anything, let's talk about what Rurik is. So Rurik is an area control game that uses a system of auctioning to perform your actions. So as the game evolves, you're going to be putting out all sorts of dudes on the board. You have these leaders with their own bases. You have resources in each region that you can tax. You have these buildings that you can build that all provide you different powers. And the biggest way you're going to be scoring points is through area control, so controlling the most regions, having those people there. The number of buildings in adjacent regions, so all connecting. And then the last thing is the number of goods that you have that are on this boat. So you have this kind of huge track that you're trying to fill. So those are the ways that you win the game, but how do you actually play the game? That's really where the brilliance of this game comes from, and that's through the action board. Now, I love this thing. This is so cool. So each of these boards here have these 6 distinct sections. And each player is going to have all these advisors. And when it's your turn, you're going to be putting your advisor into one of these columns. And the advisor's number is its initiative order. The lower it is, the sooner it's going to trigger. However, the stronger the number is, the stronger the bid is. So for example, as you can see, all the 5s are on top here. This is really cool, though, because when you bid, you can attach coins to your bids, and that will make it jump even higher. And I think that's awesome, because if you really want to go first with an action, you can load that thing with coins and stack it all the way at the top and really pressure other people to do things. But if you do that, they may, all the opponents may see it and be like, hey, this is something that he really needs to do or she really needs to do. Let's go ahead and try our best to stop him from doing that. Now, this is really fascinating just from that standpoint. Now, in addition, as it goes, you always have to pick 3 different columns first, and then you can start doubling up. And so you could potentially be in columns multiple times. And I think that's so cool. So as the game plays, you're also going to be getting more of these advisors. So it's going to fill up and you're going to feel stronger as you play. You never have to take time to get more of these, which is awesome. So it's just very integrated and well streamlined. But the system is so solid. It feels satisfying to put them on the board. I love the feeling. It's kind of like my feeling when I play Dune Imperium, where if I can get a powerful action by spending a little bit of things, that feels so strong. So in here, this person who has a 1 is getting a really strong movement action because no one else took the action. And I think that's amazing. Same thing with this build. This guy might have felt that he wasted his 5 because there's only 2 people here. So I like this tension. I like being able to squeeze in value, and that's how it works here. As you can see, the movements, they increase from 1 to 2. Those higher ones are 3s and 4s. These build actions, you can take multiple build actions to build those buildings, but the lower you are, the more it's going to cost you to actually perform those. So it's kind of scary that, maybe you don't have enough money to even take an action if you get pushed further enough, and that could really stink to lose an action. So this whole system system is brilliant. I love this action system. You program them, and then when it actually gets to the action phase, you're going to be doing your stuff. And I love that. I think that the game is solid, the system is great, and the artwork is stunning, if we're being real. The artwork is absolutely out of this world. I love the large tarot-sized cards for your leaders. I love your boat. It honestly gives me a more realistic Feast for Odin's vibe, because you have just this, you have the different spots, right? You have like the land, you have your characters, you have your boat that you're filling up with pieces. It feels good. It feels good. And once again, it's just the vibe of the game, not necessarily the gameplay. Definitely not the gameplay. But I really like these large artworks. I think the artist on the game did a stunning job. It's these painted miniatures. Ours are not painted, but those look amazing. But I love these full art cards. And if you look on the back of any of the player cards, they're all full art, so you can really appreciate it. They even did this really cute thing where there's a character that has a dog, and they just included a card of the dog for no reason. And it doesn't have any effect on the gameplay, this character here. And I think that's hilarious, but awesome, because you just get to see more of the art, and I really enjoy that. Now, the other thing that we got to try, or I got to try, was the Stone and Blade expansion. Now, Stone and Blade is the reason that we got this game, because the original game was so successful that they went out and printed the expansion. And this Stone and Blade expansion here offers a lot of new things. Now, first off, it offers some things in the solo mode that incorporate all of the new components. And the new components are very straightforward, but they're really cool because they are minor and modular. There are what are called base expansions, which include very minor things that will kind of say, hey, these are just some things that enhance the base game. And I really think they do. Now, the first one here is the combat track bonuses. So when you play the game, every time you go into combat with another opponent, you get to climb up this track, and that's kind of it. If you're the highest at the end, you get 3 points. If you're the lowest, second, you get 1 point. And that's really it. So there was actually no extreme incentive to fighting, because it was more efficient to just spam the board with characters and buildings. They just scored more points more efficiently. They helped you get more objectives. So what they've done to improve this is they've added these tokens on the right side here. And these tokens are going to say, hey, every time you pass these, you get this additional bonus. Very simple addition, but it works extremely well to incentivize combat, which is awesome. I think that's a really well done. I think it's a great fix to this problem, and I think they did a wonderful job with it. They're very powerful bonuses too, so you want to be climbing up this track because it's essentially getting bonus actions. Feels great. The other small thing that they add are these bags here. So these bags go at the end of the middle 3 trait columns, and your goal is to try to fill up these columns because you get extra income as well as points based on how many you have. Once you fill up one of these columns, you also will get this trade token, which becomes a wild resource that you can use to spend on other things. And once again, this is a great addition, a great fix to something like this, because you're not having to break up things and you get rewarded for completing these harder to finish rows. And I think that's amazing, or harder to finish columns, I should say. Now, in addition to these, you also have some new leaders that you can get, some new buildings that are easily integrated, and you also have these starting resource cards, and I love this. It's going to add some spice to the game with obviously more characters to dive into, but the starting resource cards I think are just good for any game in particular. It allows you some control with how you want to set up, some variance, and then some new positioning to kind of pivot towards. I really like this system. I think they did a great job. The new buildings are also fascinating. You have some that are going to let you get moves when you build the building, which is really cool, highly strategic. And then you also have one that allows you to get some extra coinage, which might be helpful if you're trying to prepare for future actions. And it'll let you copy the effect of the topmost, I think it's called the scheme card on the discard pile. It lets you get extra actions essentially, which is great. So I think this is awesome. I think it adds for more flexibility, more interesting gameplay, and it's great. These are so easy to implement because they're just small add-ons that I think really do enhance the game. I think they're awesome. So if you are going to get Rurik, I would get Stone and Blade right off the bat and include these changes immediately. It incentivizes specific parts of the game that were really, not as powerful, and adds some new objective cards. It adds new startup cards that I think do change the game in a fantastic way. So in addition to all of these kind of core changes, it also introduces some modular expansions. Now, these expansions I haven't dove into yet because I've just wanted to try the base game once, and then I've tried the expansion for all its core stuff. So now I'm going to, hopefully the next time I play, going to start adding in these modules. So the first module are these gigantic buildings. They give you buildings that will affect everyone, which is cool. Once again, these change each game. Very neat. You also have this prisoner module where when you attack, it's going to incentivize you to attack even more, where you can actually take out people and store them in your prison. So you can take prisoners of war. It's kind of terrifying, and this is a way that you can generate victory points. The other thing is it adds some more of the scheme cards that, unfortunately, like the others, will give you multiple casualties. So kind of scary, but once again, just like pretty much everything in this game, you can weaponize them. The other cool thing that you can add are these. These are called the different, what are they? For the neutral soldiers. So they give abilities to the neutral warriors in the land. And I think that's hilarious and cool. Normally, these neutral soldiers just kind of sit there and you take them out for resources. Now they actually behave in a specific way. And I think that's awesome. So you have lots of spice in this game, lots of variety. And I think this game is wonderful. I'm excited to see how these expansion modules interact with each other and to see how the game evolves. So that's Rurik, Dawn of Kiev. I'm having a lot of fun with this one, and I'm excited to play more of it. This so far has been a great experience. I'm so excited. So looking forward to it more. Have you played Rurik, Dawn of Kiev? Is this one that you were excited for? Do you have it coming into your Kickstarter? I'd love to hear what you think. Once again, if you have any comments on what we're talking about here, please leave them down below or put them in the live chat here, and we'll make sure we get them answered here. Now, the last game that I want to talk about today is one that I am so torn on, but I've played it a couple more times, and I think I'm ready to give my final opinions on it. And this is the Advisors expansion for Sale. Now, For Sale here is a absolutely wonderful game. So this is an auctioning game that I think does it the best. It's so good for a filler game. This is one of the most inviting filler games ever. It's so easy to get people to enjoy, to play, and to think very critically about what they're doing. Let me do a quick water break. All right, so every character here is going to be, oh, I'm saying the wrong thing. Okay, so For Sale here, the base game itself is so straightforward. Two halves. One half, you're buying houses. Second half, you're using those houses to sell for values. Love it. So simple, so straightforward. Anybody can jump into it. Amazing. Now, the Advisor expansions breaks this game and completely changes it by adding a whole third to the game. So now it's 3 phases instead of 1. And then you're also going to get special abilities. So the complexity immediately jumps up. You're having to read a lot more. You're having to keep in mind all these special powers. You're having to think about the timing and considerations of other things. You have lots of different ways to score. It's not as straightforward. And that being said, that could be a positive and a negative for you. Now, if I was playing this with people who do not game, I probably would never include this expansion because it really is significantly higher. There's all of these things that you have to track, all these special abilities to be aware of and understand the interactions between them and others. But that being said, I do like this expansion. I think it's a lot of fun. This is one that I am going to play with when I'm playing with people who are gamers, who have played For Sale a lot. I'm surprised at how much I did enjoy this one because those abilities are a blast. Now, let me just go and kind of show you the gameplay video of this. Now, on the channel, there is a how to play video for the For Sales Advisors expansion. So if you want to know the real nitty gritty on how to use it, I would go check this video out. And it's this one here. But mainly, I'm just going to be using this to show you the different artwork that's available in the game. So let me pull up. Okay, here they are. So my favorite thing has to be the different advisors and the value that comes from them. Because we had some very interesting games with this. Played this about 7 times now. So I've been playing a lot of this just to try to get my thoughts on it. And the coolest thing here is the specific timing. So once again, when you are going to be drafting here, instead of buying the value cards, you're going to be putting out money so you can take these advisors because they are going to give you abilities as well as allow you to bid for the houses. The number on these cards is what's going to push you through and actually let you purchase the houses in the second phase. Now, here's the kicker. Some of these effects arguably are better than others because they have more applications. So like this 13 here, I don't know if you can see it very well, but the 13 here has an ability where you can pay $3,000 to turn it into a 31. Which is amazing. That's so strong. You can guarantee that you get one of those really solid houses and scoop it from the person who has the 30 value. That's so cool. That's so powerful. Now, but here's the kicker. This is standard For Sale because if you bid the most, you're always bidding for the highest number. So you may purposefully put yourself in a situation where you force the person to your left to take the 17 so that you're the one who gets the 13 because you want that special power so badly. It's so interesting because you have to really consider when you're timing things and when you're dropping out and when you're passing. There's a lot here, and I think that's so cool. That's a sweet add-on, and I think that's amazing. Now, the auction phase when it comes to the houses, this is the only thing that I'm kind of like, I don't know if I'm a fan of this. When the houses come up, you're going to put them all in the middle, and then each player in turn order is going to play 1 card from the hand face up. And I think that this is probably the most awkward feeling of it, but it's not the worst. And I do like it. It kind of reminds me of modern art a little bit, where the game just has so many different forms of auctions. And I think that's fine. I think that's really cool. But I think that this one's probably the most clunky. I think I prefer the other two auctions better. But I do like that you kind of know what everybody has based on the cards they've drafted. So in the earlier rounds. So it's interesting. I think this one is probably the weakest phase out of all three. I think the first and the third are the strongest phases, in my opinion. But I do think this one does have its pluses because there are a lot of cards with green abilities, which will trigger during this phase. And I think it has its own merits in its own way. So it's really interesting. This one feels like you have way more control than you did in the original game. But because of those special powers, I think it's a lot of fun still. And those are kind of all my thoughts here. You have a lot of positives. You have lots of cool abilities, lots of new interactions. And my favorite things are the endgame scoring cards, actually. So there's one, the Financer, where if you take her, you can, at the end of the game, get extra points for the money that you have left over, which is really neat. If you get multiple of those, you score it multiple times. So this could completely change the strategy. This is one that I actually played yesterday, where I saved a whole bunch of money, or tried to save a whole bunch of money to the end of the game. And then I had multiple of these advisors, so I was multiplying the amount of money I had. And that's so neat, right? It's a very different approach to the game. You also have these cards that'll let you take your lowest value score and then turn it to like 10,000 or something, which is super cool. So now all of a sudden, getting a single zero during the bidding phase is not a bad thing. And I think that's really cool because other people might not have that consideration. So you have the luxury of taking a really bad value while others do not. But that being said, it's a trade-off, right? Because you have this ability, but they had an ability earlier. There's just so many cool things that can happen with this. So if you like For Sale, if you enjoy the system, if you enjoy the auction, if you enjoy the theme, if you enjoy this game as a whole, I recommend you get the Advisors expansion. I think it is very, very good. Now, I would not recommend that you toss it in when you're trying to teach people who have never played it before. It does add some complexity, but I think if they are people who are very much into games, I think this will be an easy addition because it is just another phase and it kind of bleeds seamlessly into the others. So I have taught it to somebody who has never played it before, but who has been playing games and they had a great time with it. So I think that this one is a solid inclusion. It's one that I would purchase. It does spice up this For Sale formula, and I think it's a very healthy thing for this game because this game is pretty old by now. I mean, it's a great game, great system. The original version is still fine. Now, if you don't know, I do rate this game a 10 out of 10. I think For Sale is For Sale is the best filler game. I think For Sale is absolutely wonderful. It's one of my favorite small card games. And I think this Advisor expansion is a great addition. I think it opens up the game space and it does it in a very natural way. And I think it's a lot of fun. I've had a great time with it, and it's one that I'm going to keep enjoying and keep on playing. Now, the last thing that I did not cover with this for this expansion is it does come with a 2-player variant. Now, I haven't played this variant because usually my only 2-player partner is my wife, and we don't really play competitive games. But there is a PDF that you can find here, and this is going to show you the instructions here. And this PDF is on like a QR code that you actually scan in the box. But the rules reference here, it pretty much states clearly that, hey, you're playing with a dummy player, and this is how they're going to do their cards. So that's really it. You just have a third player that's going to pump up the market with money and then take cards from you. And that's really it. It doesn't really do anything crazy. And then during the final phase, it'll flip its value randomly for buying, it sounds hella chaotic to me. But once again, I don't really play 2-player games, especially things like this. If I do, it's probably going to be a skirmish game. But those are kind of just my final thoughts on this. So haven't given it a try. I'd love to hear if you've played this, if you have any interest in the For Sale expansion. I'd just love to hear your thoughts in general. Now, I'll go ahead and leave the live chat open for a little bit here for any questions, if you have anything you'd like to add before I wrap up the stream today. But very interested to hear your thoughts and just in general, what you're looking at or what you're excited for. That's on crowdfunding campaigns. If there's anything you'd like to see covered in next week's episode, or if you have any thoughts on this week's. But thank you so much for watching. I'll go ahead and leave it up for a little bit here. Once again, please let me know if you have any questions or things that you'd like to see. Some other games that are getting played today, we are playing Maracaibo. We're going to play some more Ankh. I think we're going to play with the Pharaoh expansion, and that's exciting. So always looking forward to more of that. And then I think the other game is Sorcerer. I think we're playing some Sorcerer. So that's exciting. So Sorcerer, Maracaibo, Ankh, and Rurik. So excited to jump into Rurik. Hopefully we get to play the Prisoner module as well as the, what's the other one? So Prisoner and then the Epic Buildings. I think those are the two that we're going to try today. So exciting. So see how they play, see how easily integrated they are, and see if they're worth their salt. So I'm already pretty impressed with that expansion. So the little changes that they make to the core game, I think, are extremely positive. So I really am excited for this. And awesome. We have some comments here from the chat. All right, Christopher here. He likes every review of games. Fantastic. I'm glad that you like those. I really try to focus in on the gameplay. That way you can kind of see what you're getting into. So I'm glad that you liked it. Fantastic. One Deck Galaxy, and then played the other games a lot. Excellent. So yes, I'm totally with you. Like that's the one that I'm backing. So I'm thrilled. I hope that it's good. I really hope that it solves those problems. My wife actually really enjoys One Deck Dungeon a lot, and that's one that we play a lot. So if I do play it, it's with her. That's the only time I'll play it because, like I said, I did have some issue with the dice assignment and dice mitigation. So we'll see what happens with that. Oh, so this is fun. This is my friend that I'm actually gaming with today. So he says that we're playing some Twisted Fables today. So excited. Awesome. I have never heard of this game, so I'm excited to hear more about it. Hopefully you know how to play it so that we can jump into it right away. So if you haven't learned the rules, get going. And then Chris is back. He says, likes the plastic cards. Yes. If you've played any games like Too Many Bones or Cloudspire, those all have plastic cards for everything, and they are extremely nice. They really make shuffling a breeze. You don't feel bad about, handling them or passing them around. They're waterproof. I hope that they go the same route because, oh my gosh, that really is quality. Fun says that he's doing it right now. If you were doing it right now, you wouldn't be watching the stream, right? Right? That's okay. You can stay. I appreciate the support, and thank you for joining us this morning. Amazing. I'm excited. So Twisted Fables. I'm curious. Let's go ahead and take a look at what that is. Twisted Fables. I feel like I've heard this before. So Dimension Games. Fairy Tale fighting game. Oh, I've actually seen this. So this is the head-to-head Fairy Tale game. Oh, that's exciting. So I imagine you have the deluxe edition, so this is very cool. You have kind of like a cyberpunk-esque. That's kind of sweet. I like the different changes on the different backstories. I'm digging the Kaguya here. Exciting. Okay, let's look at where's some gameplay here. Right now, I'm digging the art. Is it a deck builder? What kind of style is this? Yes, I get it. There's lots of miniatures and cards. Tell me what it is. Lots of add-ons. Okay. Come on. Okay. The different fables. All right. So it looks like I'd have to look at a video to figure out how to actually play the game, which is unfortunate. Aha! Here we go. Basic actions resource system. So let's see what it's about. Okay. You can move around the board. So it looks like it reminds me a little bit of, what's that game? Exceed, where you're going to be moving along a path and punching each other. Okay, so it has some Exceed mechanics with trying to traveling around. So if you've got a player dashboard, you've got attack and defense cards that are going to allow you to move around. Okay, you're going to deal damage to your opponents by combining things, and then you have skills based on your basic actions. Okay, when you purchase cards, you're going to put higher ones beneath. You're unlocking twist cards. So it looks like it is a kind of a deck building style with twist cards. Interesting. So passive effects or one-time super strong abilities, and then epic cards. This just sounds like a lot of fun. So yep, deck builder and 2D fighting. Excellent. So this is very similar to that Exceed system. So I do like this style. I think it's fun. Now, Light Dog here, Fun over here, he is one of my main guys that I will play 2-player games with. So that's exciting. I'm excited to try this one out. Yeah, this looks neat. So looking forward to this. This looks like a fun time, and then I can get my thoughts on here. Awesome. So we'll leave it up for another minute. If you have any more questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. I'll definitely make sure they get covered. But once again, thank you so much for joining me this morning and for being here and sharing your thoughts and comments about what we're talking about here, all these amazing new projects. Are there any games that you're backing on Kickstarter? Anything that you're excited to jump into? What do you think about Agemonia? I'd love to hear your thoughts just in general. Once again, I still think I'm just going to wait on that one, as the exclusives are kind of like exclusives, as most of these deluxe editions are. You can generally get them later. One thing I do want to add about Rurik, though, is in Rurik, there was a specific component that I think is really kind of goofy. The more I've been playing with it, the more I like it. But in the core game, there are these Honeycomb tokens that are like this yellow hexagonal piece. And when you play with them, they're really cool. They look really neat. They're kind of these cute little honeycombs. But the Kickstarter edition had an offer where they gave you these honey tokens instead, which are simply just these clear plastic cubes. So it's a very simple upgrade, but to me it kind of felt like a downgrade. So it was really weird, because I was like, huh, do I even need these? Do I prefer the little honeycombs more? Once again, the more I've been playing with it, the more I appreciate the little honey cubes, because they do look very honey-like, and they look like they have these little honey bubbles in them. So I really like that. But it's so interesting when you have these deluxe upgrades that are almost as nice as the original components of the game. So my goal now is to find a game that can use those original honeycomb tokens, because I do think they look so good. So that's my whole goal, is to jump into that. And when Christopher here, he says that I missed the start of the stream, so it's going to get back to us on Agemonia. Excellent. So when you do have your thoughts, you can always leave in the comments, and we'll talk about them there. But appreciate you being here now, Christopher. All right. And I think that is all the time that we have for today. So I do appreciate, once again, everybody for tuning into the stream and for being here, for sharing your thoughts. Super excited for these games. Can't wait to play more For Sale and to play Rurik. These are awesome games. I'm super excited, and there's just a lot of good stuff right now. We're having Gen Con right now, so lots of cool new reveals from Fantasy Flight and from all of these channels that aren't even on there. So it's pretty great that even though that some people aren't able to be at the convention in person, they're still able to be making these really fun announcements. So lots of neat gaming coming up, lots of new Kickstarters happening, and a lot of things delivering. This is the season for deliveries. I know it started back in May, but we are going to be getting deliveries from now until January. So excited for this, excited to try more new stuff. I think Dinosaur World, Merchants of the Dark Road, I think those are the ones that are going to be next for delivery. So excited, looking forward to it. But thank you so much for watching. SideGame Strong.